Hey everybody, Tom Barnes, stories from the 78, talking to my good friend David Ellis. You might recognize his name because he's written over 8 books with best-selling author James Patterson. He's an Edgar Award-winning author of 10 novels on crime fiction. He helped lead the case against Rod Blagojevich. This is his latest book now, The Best of Lies. Hi David, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Tom. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to talking to you. You have written 10 novels, 8 of them separate outside of that with James Patterson. Is that right? Did I get so it's like 18 total so far?
I'm losing track. It might be more like 22 at this point, Tom.
Man.
And I don't do a good job of updating because I kind of lose track. We've got one coming out soon. Seems like I've always got stuff going on. Yeah, right about that number, though. Yeah.
So yeah, I got the new book right here, The Best of Lies, the newest one that I believe is out, and you've done already a couple book signings here in September, but I imagine you have more coming up in October. But talk about your career, just because I think for people in Chicago specifically, there's interesting journey for you, with Rod Blagojevich, being a judge, writing all these books, and crime in general. It seems like you're an expert.
Yeah, I've been in the right place at the right time, or maybe I'm a testament to, if your curiosity takes you places, let it take you and go to things in your career that make you interested. Yeah, I'm a suburban Chicagoan almost my entire life, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Spent a few years in Kansas when I was little, which is why I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan,
Well,
which
it's
is a
easy to do
nice
right
thing to
now.
be right now, but it wasn't so nice for about the first 50 years of my life.
Yeah, I get
Um,
that.
yeah, I grew up in Downers Grove. And so
Oh.
kind of the traditional, went to Downers Grove North High School. I went to U of I, University of Illinois for college,
Mm-hmm.
Northwestern Law School. Kind of followed all the rules and kind of did the sort of path that, you'd a fairly traditional path. Um, After being a lawyer for a couple years in downtown Chicago, working at one of these giant law firms,
Mm-hmm.
working crazy hours, I realized that I had forgotten a part of myself, which was that I loved to write creatively. And they kind of stopped teaching that, right, Tom? Like when you get to like middle school, certainly high school, it's not part of the curriculum anymore. And so
No,
if you don't
especially
make
now.
yourself do it outside of school, you're not going to.
Right, and it's
Which is
harder to
funny,
do.
because you take any high school, right? They're gonna be very big on sports. They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
be big on music. They're gonna be big on theater. They'll do all kinds of, debate. They'll do all sorts of arts and sports, but they don't do creative writing really. And you take English classes, but you don't learn that stuff. And so there are a lot of people out there, I think, who have the bug, but if they're not being forced to do it in school, they're not going to take it upon themselves to do it. So, I had one of these moments, Tom, like a couple years after I was a lawyer. We've all had these moments. We're on vacation. I'm in Florida. My toes are in the sand. I'm having a cocktail and I'm watching the sunset, right? And I'm thinking about my life. And I'm like, why'd you stop writing? And I made a deal with myself then in about 1995 or 6
Mm-hmm.
that I was going to write a novel. I wasn't just going to think about it. I wasn't just going to write a few chapters and give up. I was going to see it through. So I spent about an hour a night um, for the next 3 years teaching myself how to write and getting better and better as I went along, building the muscles. Just like if you're lifting weights, you get bigger
Sure.
muscles. And, I finally got a product done just about like 1999, I think. And, but meanwhile, yeah, I've been lucky in my legal profession too. After working at a downtown law firm for a while, which is pretty tough, pretty crazy hours. You're working till 10 o'clock every night.
Yeah.
I went down to Springfield and I did some work for the House of Representatives and came back, started my own law firm in Chicago for a few years. And then I got called back down to Springfield to be counsel to the House of Representatives, to be the chief legal counsel. And that's when I met Rod Blagojevich, our second term governor at the time.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, that was crazy, Tom. I mean, everybody knows the story now. He was very hard on the legislature. He would keep us in session year round. It's a part-time legislature. It's supposed to really just be there from January to May. He
Hmm.
kept us in all year round to punish us, and he was just at a war. And so he was in a war with the legislature. And so then December 9th, 2008 hits, and we find out that he's been charged with a litany of crimes by the FBI. I couldn't believe my ears. I remember being in Springfield watching it on television. My jaw had dropped.
Mm.
My first reaction was that he would resign. My second reaction was no, he probably won't resign.
Right. Yeah.
And my third thought was there's invariably going to be a call for an impeachment. And the next thing I know, I'm working on the impeachment of the governor. So, it wasn't something I sought out, but there I was.
Talking about the right place for you, at least, maybe not for Mr. Blagojevich, but either way, I mean, to be a fly on the wall of some of those conversations that you had in all that process, I'm sure gave you, as you, like, how many books were you in when this stuff happened?
So by then, Tom, I published my first book right around 2000. And so by then I was probably 7 or 8 books in. And the really funny thing is I started slowing down when I was working in Springfield because of the work volume. I thought working at a law firm was a lot. I was working 20 hours a day. So I wasn't turning out my books. And my publisher called me one day and they said, why are you slowing down? What's wrong? And I said, I've got this governor I'm dealing with. And those people in New York had no idea who Rod Blagojevich was. Mm-hmm. And I said, I have a feeling you will someday, but not yet. And they said, well, if he's interesting, why don't you write a story about him or based on him, more of a character-driven novel? Like I write thrillers, right? I write murder mysteries. And they said, why don't you write something a little more nuanced about someone who maybe is in over his head when he gets the job as governor? Maybe he has good intentions, but he surrounds himself with not so good people. Next thing he knows, he doesn't recognize himself in the mirror. Now, that sounded cool to me. I thought I would give that a shot. I was 3/4 of the way through that book on December 9th, 2008, when I saw he was arrested. So I told you my third thought was we'd probably have to impeach him. My fourth thought that day was I'm going to have to take this novel I've just been writing and toss it in the garbage because truth has now become much stranger than fiction. I couldn't keep the book going.
Oh, man. I mean, but
it was crazy.
Good fodder for future books, I imagine. Like, I bet you there was plenty of things where you're like, I can't make this up. You can't make this stuff up.
100%. I just kept saying nobody would believe this if I wrote it, and now it's really happening. I did base a book on the impeachment, not too on the nose. It was a different book. It was called Breach of Trust, and that was a fun book, and people had fun with it. I didn't get too close to what really happened because that wouldn't be fun for me, but definitely loosely based it on him. Yeah.
So what are you more proud of now? I mean, you're a lawyer, a judge, correct? Yeah, and you are you find yourself on some big lists as far as books are concerned. Are you more proud of the law background and what you've done for in your law profession, or as an author?
Boy, that is a loaded question. That's hard. I mean, the stakes are so high in the cases I work on. So I'm a justice of the Illinois Appellate Court. So I get every civil and criminal appeal out of Cook County. That's my district. Cook County is so big, it's its own judicial district in Illinois. And Cook County mostly means Chicago. So I get all the Chicago crime and I get all the big civil lawsuits that are filed here. And so, which you know very well, I know you've followed, you're a Chicagoan at heart too. And I know you've probably followed many of the stories. You've probably followed some of the cases I was a judge on. And, but the stakes are so high, I mean, in many of those cases, somebody's been, for example, in a criminal case, they've been sentenced to maybe life in prison. And I have to get that right. It's not just, I hope I sell this many books or that many, or I hope, there's like a person and their family whose entire life is at stake. And so I have to get those right. And I try very hard to do that. And I guess by a hair, I would say that's what I'm proudest of, just because of the importance. But I'll tell you, Tom, in terms of writing, what I'm proudest of is that I saw it through when I first realized it was my goal, because there are a million reasons not to write a book. Most of them are you're not going to make it. And you'll have looked back at all that time and said, I wasted all that time. And I had to be willing to take that chance when I had lots of other things I'd rather be doing that hour a night when I was writing that first book. Going out with my friends, working out, listening to music, whatever. But I was determined not to fail. I just said, I'm going to keep doing it until I get published. It took me a long time, but I did. That's probably what I'm proudest of.
Yeah, I mean, it's inspirational in a way just to listen to you talk about just not giving up, just because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do, or a lot of people don't even try. A lot of people are just terrified of failing, so they don't even put themselves out there. You not only put yourself out there, you put in the work while there was no, reward as it was going out, other than the fact that you just completed an hour of writing, every night that you did it, where
Yeah.
you can at least go to bed going, okay, I did that. Whether or not anybody sees it, I don't care. At least I did it, right?
Yeah, at least I did it. I would have never been able to forgive myself if I didn't finish that and give it my all. And look, Tom, I got turned down by 75 agents.
Wow.
Like, this was before the internet, okay?
Uh-huh.
Now you can email your book to an agent and they'll read as much as they want if they're deciding whether to take you. And they won't read much, I promise you. They'll read a page and be like, no, not for me. Or this is interesting, I'll keep reading. But back then, when I was doing it, you were putting it in the US mail.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't let you send the whole book because just imagine they get 200 submissions a week, each agent that I know of. And so if every one of those had 350 page, packages, your office, you'd have nowhere to sit.
No.
So
yeah.
all you sent back then was a cover letter. I got turned down. It's called a query letter, Query, a query letter. I got turned down just on my query letter by 75 people. And so I had to rewrite my query letter. And I'm sitting here thinking, I could have written the best book since War and Peace, but if my cover letter isn't good, you're never even going to look at it. And so I had to write a really enticing cover letter, right? Like, I started using my creativity in writing my cover letter just to get people to say, I'll read some of it. And eventually, of course, I did get an agent and I got a very big publishing house. But boy, there were a million reasons to quit. And I just wouldn't.
Do you remember the ingredients in that cover letter that finally got somebody to bite? Where you're like, yes, there it is.
Oh, 100% I do. The first scene in my first book is a man in the first person, point of view, walking up to the back of a house on a cold, windy night, watching a curtain slide open and a woman perform a striptease. And you are not entirely sure whether she knows he's watching or whether she's doing it for somebody else. And then, of course, from there, something really bad happens. And so I started the query letter, part 2, my second one, which I sent back to the same agents, by the way, because I knew they didn't remember me.
Sure.
I put them in their in that situation. I wrote it in the second person. You are walking up to the hill. You are waiting for the curtain to open. Your heart is pounding, whatever. And people were like, okay, that's kind of enticing. And I thought I should have done that to begin with, right? Like, they don't want, hello, my name is Dave Ellis, I've written this novel. They want, this is what's cool about the book. I mean, I learned a lesson right there, I mean, you learn so many lessons when you write and you get feedback from people.
Has there been any surprises along the way with your family where they're like, wait, what are you doing now? Like, how many books have you written? Are people surprised that you've not only continued your law career the way you have, but also have this stunning writer's world that you live in?
I mean, I think the people who know me best knew that I was going to be determined and that I was going to try to see it through, but none of us knew if I was going to succeed, and nobody knew if I was going to continue on, right? Like, I was lucky my first book won the Edgar Allan Poe Award for Best First Novel. After being turned down by so many people, it won like the most prestigious mystery award. That was a really big deal for me, Tom, because I was
that's a big deal, yeah.
Sure. And, and for me, I was at what is now Penguin Random House. Back then it was Penguin. Biggest publisher in the world. I'm in a very big pond and I'm a small fish. It made me a bigger fish. It got me noticed. They said, okay, you're the real deal. Let's start a relationship. And it's continued on till now. So that was the greatest thing about that award. I mean, awards are nice. I don't put too much stock in them, but it got me noticed within my own publishing house. My friends have just mostly been tickled by the whole thing. They had trouble reading the first book because it was written in the first person about a man who's having an affair with a married woman who gets charged with the murder of her husband. And here I'm writing it in the first person like it's me and they know me, So it's a little weird when your friends write a book and you're like reading it and you're like, oh, this sounds like you, Dave. Or, are you a psychopath? Are you
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, your friends look at you side-eyed and be like, well, where are you getting this stuff from? But then at the same time, you're
I
like, hey,
continue
listen,
to
man, I've
get
been in
that.
law.
Yes, and when I write particularly crazy stuff, I often think, "Oh, my friends are going to love this," and I will get teased mercilessly by my friends for the things that I write. But they're all they've gotten used to it now, so now it's more just kind of fun for everybody.
And you got Chicago as a nice backdrop for at least the novel here, and you use it a lot, right? And the grittiness of the city, the untold stories that just the skyline itself has weaved in throughout.
Yeah, no, I mean Chicago. I didn't used to name the city in my earlier books, but the last two books I've written, I took a little break from writing solo books when I was writing with Patterson. But I wrote Look Closer during COVID and set that in a suburb outside of Chicago. And The Best Lies is literally set in the city. The thing I love about Chicago, and you and I could spend an hour talking about what we love about Chicago, but from a writer's viewpoint, the great thing about Chicago is it's a big city with all that entails, but I feel like in some ways a lot of us are still small town people, I mean, we're Midwesterners. It's a different vibe. We're generally pretty nice to each other. You're going to get the grit, you're going to get the crime, you're going to get the people who aren't so nice, and you're going to get it in abundance. And you're going to get political corruption, you're going to get all kinds of stuff. So
Sure.
there's really nothing you're not going to see in Chicago, but you also get a lot of really just decent Midwestern people who are really just pretty normal people. They're not transients like people who live in LA who came from somewhere else.
Yep.
Most of the people in Chicago grew up here and just never left.
Yeah, I like right out of the gate in the book, you're talking about somebody's going to a Bulls game. And right away,
Yeah.
you just know, like, especially if you live in Chicago, we've all been there when you're on your way to a Bulls game or a Hawks game or Bears, Cubs, whatever. And something happens where you're like, oh, like what? And like you have that weird memory of going to that thing that had this big event for somebody, which is kind of what's going on in the first part of the first page, I think, of the book. So,
Yep. Put it right
yeah.
up. I thought that would resonate with people.
And it did. And, I imagine, how many stories do you have like up in your brain where you're like, I don't know if I can tell that one?
Oh, probably a few just that hit close to home,
Uh-huh.
like I try never to do that. I mean, like I would probably never write a book about the appellate court. My judges on the court will joke, don't put this in a book, when they say something to me.
Sure, yeah.
I that wouldn't be fun for me and that would feel like a betrayal. But yeah, I mean, I get all kinds of ideas, right? I mean, I see so much stuff. I've never written a book that was based on anything that's been a case of mine, but I've gotten ideas from cases. And I'll tell you this might be interesting to you. So I get all civil and criminal appeals, and I've been on the court for 10 years. So people say, I assume that most of the really horrible stuff that you see that you get that inspire you for books come from your criminal cases, right?
Mhm.
And I said, some of them come from criminal cases, but just as many come from the divorce cases. It's
Oh,
amazing what people will do to each other when matters of the heart are concerned. And that's interesting to me because at the core, that's what I like to write about. I like to write about conventional people. I don't call them normal. I don't think any of us are normal. I don't think any of us would call ourselves normal. But conventional
yeah,
people, we
sure.
basically follow the rules. We pay our taxes. We take our kids to school. We have a job. We own a home. We have neighbors that we're nice to, or not nice to. But we're conventional. We don't break the big rules. I'm interested in conventional people who, for whatever reason, are compelled to break the really big rules, like commit murder.
Hmm.
So, I get these divorce cases and these very domestic settings where people will do terrible things to each other and say terrible things about each other. And I think, wow, these are conventional people doing unconventional things. They're not criminals, in other words. They're not people who are, because they're poor, they're stealing, or because of some gang rivalry, they're shooting each other. These are just people doing awful things to each other.
Yeah, I imagine that's why true crime like podcasts are so popular throughout the world, just because it's, the normal, like you said, domestic disturbance that turns into like this murder mystery of like who done it, right? And then the podcast walks you through the whole thing. Very similar to like, what you do in your books, the story about conventional people and this crazy thing happens to them, and then the story that follows. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
you're 100% right. That is exactly why true crime, in my opinion, is popular, because we can relate to these people. I don't mind reading a book with a superhero. I mean, I don't mind watching a Batman movie or Superman or something, or Harry Potter or Star Wars. But what I really like, and therefore what I write about, is real people. And they make mistakes. They have flaws. And yeah, the true crime, boy, he seemed like such a nice person. We carpooled together for soccer for our kids. He was the assistant coach on the Little League baseball team. We went to church together. I had no idea he would take an axe and murder his wife, like
Yeah.
that. But
Sounds
we
like
all,
John Wayne Gacy.
yeah, right, right. But but we're drawn to that because it reminds us of our own lives. And I think we're all just a few impulses away from from not being bad people, but doing bad things. I mean, we just don't do them. Most of us choose to control these impulses. I mean, I've had moments, especially if someone mistreats my children, like you want to get to me, say something mean to my children or bully my children, and I would want to kill you. I mean, I won't. I
Right.
promise I won't. But
Right.
that instinct would be, I want to do something really bad. But you don't. But a few people do. And that's when people snap. I think that's interesting to people, what causes them to snap.
Right, because it's so relatable, because you could easily be that person who, it was the one last thing that made that normal person that paid their taxes for 30 years and was a law-abiding citizen
Yeah.
crack, which is terrifying to think about on one end, to lose a normal person or a conventional person, to lose that self-control and crack and become a criminal, or what you don't do, right? And I guess that's what the appeal is. It's that I could be that person, even though
Yeah.
I have no intent on doing anything. You could have a bad day where if you just, yeah, that's what's so gripping about it, I think. And,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
it,
We're all just kind of hanging on by a thread a little bit. Yep.
right. Yeah. You've had a bunch of book signings that have happened in September. Do you have anything coming up in October here where people can come out, talk with you and share some thoughts?
So I think I have covered most of the local stuff,
Hmm.
Tom, over the last month. I know I'm going to New York for a few things. I'm going to the Huntington Library in New York in early October.
Oh, that'll
Um,
be fun.
yeah, no, it's these libraries are great. I went to a library in Toledo, and I think there were like 125 people there,
Wow.
and it was this beautiful library. I know Toledo, Ohio. You don't think, oh, that's where I'm going to find a great library. It's probably the nicest library I ever set foot in.
Wow.
They just care about it, and they devote public resources to it, and it's just beautiful. And they bring in all these really interesting people. I'm lucky to have been one of them. Um, what I do a lot, Tom, is because there's not as many bookstores
Hmm.
anymore. Unfortunately, when I started, I'll draw you this analogy. When I wrote my first book, Line of Vision, I went to New York where my publisher was. I went to Manhattan. There were 4 mystery only bookstores just in Manhattan, and you'd go to each one and sign the books. I don't think there's 4 mystery only bookstores in the country. There might be, but there's less than 10. They're just not around. And one of the things I've tried to do is bring myself to people
Hmm.
rather than make them come to me. I always offer people, and I put it on my website, I'll do a book club with you. If you read my book, if you and your friends read my book, it'll probably be virtual. If it's close to where I live, sure, I'll come see you personally, but more likely it'll be an hour, Wednesday night or Thursday afternoon, whatever you want. We'll just do a Zoom or something like this, like you and I are doing, and we'll talk about the book. And readers have really responded to that. They've really enjoyed getting to talk to the author in
Yeah.
fairly close quarters. I just did one in Pakistan, in Karachi, Pakistan, with a bunch of women who had read the book, who were American expats. Well, they weren't all expats, but they all spoke wonderful English. They spoke better English than I do. And it was their 8 p.m. on Saturday night. It was my 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. But what the heck? They were drinking martinis and chatting, and I was drinking orange juice and chatting, but it was great. And that's a way we can get this divide, overcome. And just as long as we can make the details work, I do a couple every week.
That's
And
incredible.
sometimes there's like 6 people, sometimes there's 36. I don't care, I'll do them because it's my way of saying thank you for reading my book and for wanting to talk to me about it.
Yeah, that's great to make yourself available like that in an unconventional way. I mean, not a lot of authors do that in general. However
I
many books they've
noticed.
written, and so you're onto something there, sir. So, if people want to find out more about you, what's the website they can go to just to find more, or where you are traveling when you are doing your book signings and all that stuff?
Sure. I mean, the best places to find me are my website, which is my name, davidellis.com, and Instagram. I'm on Facebook. It's tied up with Instagram. So between those two social medias, it's just David Ellis author. I'm very easy to find. I try to keep you posted on social media, certainly my website if you want to do a book club. Thank you for asking, by the way. Yeah,
Sure.
I try to be as accessible as I can
In
to
all your
anybody
free
who's
time.
nice enough to buy my book.
Yeah. In all your free time, right?
Yeah.
Like, seems like you are a very interesting person to talk to, and I definitely think that we can talk all day long about Chicago or what
Yes.
have you. But I'll cut it to now, just because I know you got things to do. But I do appreciate you taking time to talk with me, and nothing but much success. I look forward to reading future books of yours as they come out.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom. I'll come back anytime. You were very easy.
Happy to have you.